You're tuned in to the English Up Podcast.
Brought to you by the Speak English with Us.
Quick question. How many tabs, folders, and save links are open right now? Be honest. Is it 5 or is it a digital jungle?
If your screen looks like mine yesterday, we've already lost the battle. I clicked one file, found 3 more, and forgot why I opened the first one.
That's the real pain point right there. You're not lazy, and you're not disorganized beyond help. You're getting slowed down by your own digital stuff.
And that slowdown is exactly what we're talking about today. If your files, screenshots, notes, and links are scattered everywhere, your brain keeps treating them like unfinished business.
This is a B1 level episode perfect for intermediate learners. Beginners, you're welcome too. And there is one thing we found. The mess is often a bottleneck, not a character flaw.
That word matters. A bottleneck is the part of the process that slows everything down. And for a lot of people, the slowdown isn't the work itself. It's the hunt before the work.
I've spent 10 minutes looking for one screenshot, then felt weirdly proud of myself for finding it, which is honestly a low bar.
Same. And that's the trap. Once clutter starts piling up, every tiny task feels heavier than it should.
So today, we're not asking you to become a perfect digital minimalist. We're showing you how to streamline the way your stuff gets handled so your brain can stop acting like a frantic file clerk.
Quick choice. Are you more of an everything on the desktop person or a save it and pray person? Say A or B in your head. You probably know the answer already.
And if you just laughed a little too hard, that's your sign. We're probably talking about your yesterday, your current chaos, and maybe your lunch break.
Stay until the end for our word tour 5 expressions that'll help you talk about digital clutter, smart systems, and practical fixes.
And later, we'll give you one tiny trick that changes everything. But first, let's walk through the moment where a simple file becomes a full-blown headache. I want to tell you about the day my laptop turned into pure clutter. I had one client brief, 6 screenshots, 2 voice notes, and a link I swore I'd remember. And then I froze.
That freeze is the bottleneck in action. You're not stuck because the task is hard. You're stuck because your brain can't see the next step clearly.
Exactly. I kept opening folders, then closing them, then opening my inbox again. Like that would magically sort everything out. Spoiler, it didn't.
Of course not. If the information isn't structured, your brain has to do the sorting, and that's a terrible job for a tired brain.
I remember sweating a little because the meeting was in 12 minutes, and I still couldn't find the right file. It felt silly, but also kind of humiliating.
That's why a simple system helps, not a fancy one. A clear one. You don't need 20 labels. You need 4 places where every item can go fast.
So the mess itself isn't the only problem. It's the repeated decision-making, right?
Exactly. That's choice overload. When everything lands in one big pile, every new file asks, where should I go? And every old file asks, should I stay? That tiny question becomes a constant drain.
And once that drain starts, even small things feel heavy. A link becomes a search. A search becomes a delay. A delay becomes this weird wave of guilt.
Which is why we use the 4-folder inbox system. Action, reference, waiting, archive, nothing mystical. Just enough structure to keep clutter from turning into a bottleneck.
Okay, but can I admit something embarrassing? I used to save every useful article into one giant bookmarks folder called Later. That folder was basically a digital landfill.
I've done the same. Mine was named Important Stuff, which is hilarious because I couldn't find anything in it.
So let's make this practical. Imagine you get a client message with a file, a screenshot, and a question. You don't open everything and dive in. You ask one thing first. What action does this need?
If it needs work today, it goes to action. If it's useful background, it goes to reference. If you're waiting for someone else, it goes to waiting. If it's done, keep it safe in archive.
That already feels calmer. It's like your brain stops holding its breath.
And notice what you're doing there. You're not deciding the fate of every item forever. You're just deciding its next home. That's how you streamline the process without becoming a full-time organizer.
I love that phrase because it sounds like your brain finally put on a sensible pair of shoes.
Exactly. And there's a hands-on part to this too. Don't start by cleaning your entire digital life. Start with one messy spot. Maybe your desktop, maybe your downloads, maybe that cursed later folder.
I tried that with my screenshots. I spent 15 minutes sorting them once, and suddenly I could find things in seconds. That tiny win felt weirdly powerful.
That's because the system gives your brain less to remember. And when the brain has less to remember, it has more room to think.
So the goal isn't perfection. It's reducing friction, less clutter, fewer decisions, less panic when you need something fast.
And tomorrow, when a new file arrives, don't let it sit on the surface. Give it a job immediately. One move, one folder, done.
That's such a relief to hear because it means the answer isn't work harder. It's make the path clearer.
And by the way, there's a phrase for this pattern of delay and overload. It shows up all over digital life, and we'll break it down in our word tour.
So if your desk, downloads, and saved links all feel like one giant pile, stay with us. Because this is exactly where the system starts to change your day. Okay, so we've named the problem. But here's the uncomfortable question. Do you really need another system, or are you just tired of every system you've tried?
I get that question, and I'm going to push back hard. A messy setup isn't personal style when it keeps stealing time. If you spend 12 minutes searching for one link, that's a bottleneck, not freedom.
But what if the real issue is that people keep adding more tools? One note app, 2 drives, 3 chat threads, and suddenly the clutter gets worse, not better.
That's exactly why the structure matters. The point isn't to collect more apps. It's to streamline where things go so you stop making decisions every 5 minutes.
I'm not fully buying that. A lot of people say system, then they spend an afternoon color-coding folders and still don't finish the actual task.
Sure, if the system becomes a hobby, it's useless. But a real one is hands-on. It's simple enough that you'll actually use it when your brain is tired and you've got 3 meetings left.
Let me challenge that. If everything goes into 4 folders, aren't you just hiding the problem? The clutter still exists. It just looks cleaner on the outside.
No, because the goal isn't to erase reality. The goal is to create a clearer path from I found it to I can act on it. That's where archive, waiting, action, and reference each do one job.
Okay, but people hate feeling like they're doing unpaid admin. They already think, I need to save this, rename that, move this later. It sounds like extra work.
And that's where choice overload kicks in. When you're faced with too many options, your brain slows down before you even start. So yes, the setup is a little work up front, but it removes repeated micro-decisions all day.
I hate that this is true because it means my I'll sort it later habit has been quietly charging me interest.
Exactly. Later is expensive. Every time you delay, the bottleneck grows more files, more screenshots, more where did I put that moments.
So you're saying the hidden cost isn't just the lost minute. It's the mental drag, the second guessing, the weird sense that something's still unfinished.
Yes, and that's very real. Psychologists call that the Zeigarnik effect. Our brains keep unfinished things active in the background, which is why a messy inbox feels louder than it should.
Oh, That explains so much. So even if I close the laptop, my brain hasn't really closed the tab.
Exactly, and once you know that, the fix gets clearer. You're not trying to remember everything, you're trying to give every new item a home fast.
But let's test the idea. Say I get a client brief, a screenshot, and a meeting note in one morning. What do I actually do without turning it into a productivity performance?
You give each item one move. Brief goes to action if it needs work. Note goes to reference if it's useful later. Screenshot waits if someone else has to answer, and anything finished goes to archive.
So the win is not perfect organization. It's faster decisions with less emotional friction.
That's the whole point. And if you want proof, look at remote teams and freelancers who switch to one intake flow. They don't suddenly become superheroes. They just stop wasting energy on repeat searches and duplicate checking.
But I still think some people will say, I'm fine. I know where everything is. Then one day their desktop has 147 files and the confidence disappears.
Right, and by then, the clutter has already won. You know the feeling 1 minute you're totally on top of it. The next minute, you're opening random folders like you're solving a mystery.
So the real debate isn't whether digital mess is annoying. It's whether you want to keep paying for it with focus, calm, and time.
And I'd argue that's not a fair trade. A good system doesn't make you more robotic. It gives your attention back.
And that's the part I can agree with. Not because the folders are magical, but because your brain finally stops acting like a giant sticky note.
Exactly. And we're about to turn that idea into 5 usable words in our word tour. We'll make them practical, clear, and easy to steal for real life.
Okay, so we've talked about the mess, the system, and the real cost of digital clutter. Now it's time to make it stick.
We've got 5 words that showed up all through today's conversation, and each one is genuinely useful outside this episode too.
These aren't textbook words. They're the kind you'll actually want to use on Monday morning.
Let's break them down, one by one.
We keep talking about that one messy morning when everything felt stuck. The file was there somewhere, the note was there somewhere, and still, nothing moved.
Right, and that feeling had a name in our story, a bottleneck. A bottleneck is the part of a process that slows everything down, like one tiny missing link holding up your whole afternoon.
So, if I'm waiting on one screenshot before I can send a report, that screenshot is the bottleneck. It's not the whole project, just the thing blocking movement.
Exactly. And that's why we don't just ask, where is it? We ask, what is stopping the flow? That shift is small, but it changes how you think.
And then there's clutter. That word sounds casual, but it's doing serious work in our episode.
Oh, definitely. Clutter means too many things in a messy state. Not just physical mess, but digital mess too. 20 save links, 4 versions of the same note, random screenshots with names like Final 2. That's clutter.
Final 2 should honestly be in prison. But yes, clutter makes every tiny task feel heavier because your eyes have to work harder before your brain can even start.
And that's why we said your digital stuff can slow you down even when you're technically organized. If the folder is overflowing, it still behaves like clutter.
Now let's talk about streamline. I really like this one because it sounds clean and calm.
To streamline means to make a process simpler and faster. In our episode, that meant cutting the chaos down to 4 folders, so every new item had one obvious place to go.
So instead of stopping to debate, should this live here or there, you just move it fast and keep going. That feels less like admin and more like relief.
Exactly. A streamlined system doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for consistency. That's why the daily inbox clear-out matters more than a giant Sunday cleanup.
And when we talked about the long-term home for useful stuff, We used archive.
Yes. To archive something means to store it away for later use. You're not throwing it out. You're simply putting it somewhere safe after it's done its job.
So if a project is finished, it goes into archive. If a note might help later, it can go there too. It's like giving old items a quiet room instead of leaving them in the hallway.
That hallway image is perfect. Nobody wants 20 finished projects standing in the doorway, staring at them every time they open the laptop.
And then we had hands-on, which is a great one because it feels practical right away.
Hands-on means practical and directly useful rather than theoretical. A hands-on fix is something you can do today, not a vague idea for someday.
So a hands-on approach would be, sort your desktop now, decide your 4 folders now, and stop waiting for the perfect mood to appear.
Exactly. Hands-on language is useful because it pushes you toward action, not endless planning. That's very different from saying, I should probably get more organized at some point.
Let's make it even more real. Say you open your computer and see a messy downloads folder, a half-written note, and 3 random PDFs. Your bottleneck is the choice moment, your clutter is the pile, your streamline move is the 4-folder rule, your archive folder keeps old files safe, and your hands-on habit is sorting them in under a minute.
That's the beauty of these words. They fit the story, but they also fit real life. You can use them at work, while studying, or when you're just trying not to lose your mind before lunch.
And now they're yours. 1 small system, 5 useful words, and a lot less chaos.
Try using one of them the next time you explain a messy workflow. It'll sound natural, and it'll help you think more clearly too.
So here's the big idea. Your digital stuff isn't just messy. It can quietly drain your focus, slow your decisions, and make simple tasks feel weirdly heavy.
And the fix wasn't work harder. It was to make the system easier on your brain. 1 clear inbox, 4 folders, and 1 daily clearing habit.
If you want to try this tonight, start tiny. Move your desktop files into action, reference, waiting, or archive. Don't perfect it. Just make it workable.
Then pick 1 time each day for a fast inbox sweep. 2 minutes is enough to stop the bottleneck from growing into a full-blown mess.
And if you keep everything in one place right now, that's okay. I used to save links everywhere and then panic later, which is a terrible hobby, by the way.
Same here. I once spent half an hour looking for a meeting note, found 3 old screenshots, and still didn't find the note. That was the moment I knew I needed something hands-on, not another theory.
That's the shift I hope you felt today. The goal isn't to become a perfect organizer. It's to stop letting clutter run the show.
And remember the words we explored: bottleneck, clutter, streamline, archive, and hands-on. They're useful not just for English, but for thinking more clearly about your own workflow.
So try 1 small change tonight, then notice what gets easier tomorrow. Less searching, less double-checking, less mental noise.
Before you go, we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, which part of your digital life slows you down the most?
We read every single comment, and we'd love to know what you're going to fix first.
Thanks for listening, and if this episode helped, use 1 word from today in a sentence this week.
We'll be back soon with more practical English and more real-life systems you can actually use.
Thanks for being here, and see you next time.